A new policy from the Trump administration impacting consumers, CDL loophole being closed, and America's talking with clips from across the country. This is the Center Square Daily for Friday, February 13th, 2026. Hoping you find some luck on this Friday the 13th. I'm Greg Bishop, your host for the Center Square Daily, and we start with a new policy from the Trump administration that terminates an Obama-era climate change policy. Yesterday, President Donald Trump terminating the Environmental Protection Agency's endangerment finding. That's a policy that led to sweeping climate change regulations and higher costs for a variety of different things all across the country. The president said that the issue is important to his campaign pledge to make America great again.
This is now taken it to a level that I think, Lee, that nobody ever thought even possible. They thought this was, nobody would have the courage to do it. We have to have the courage to do it because we're making America great again. This is a big factor in making our country great. If you look at some of these cars, they didn't even work. They had computers all over the place trying to save a half an ounce of fuel. We have fuel for the next 500 to 1,000 years under our feet, and they're trying like hell to save a half an ounce of fuel. The whole thing is just crazy.
Now, that Obama-era endangerment finding in 2009 restricted greenhouse gas emissions, and it also allowed for restrictions on emissions considered a threat to public health. Now, the finding allowed the federal government to restrict emissions under the Clean Air Act because it claimed greenhouse gases posed a threat to public health and welfare. But America's Power said the policy had been used as a basis for regulating and threatening the reliability of the nation's electric grid. Just think of the emissions coming off of coal-fired power plants. Meanwhile, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, who's gone head-to-head with the Trump administration in federal courts around 50 different times on different issues, he released this statement yesterday after President Trump rescinded the Obama-era rule, saying rescinding this finding will undo progress we've made to address climate change by eliminating existing EPA greenhouse gas emission standards for vehicles and undermining the EPA's mandate to regulate harmful air pollution that causes climate change. Well, President Trump was asked about some of those concerns yesterday, and he said that people shouldn't worry about the environmental impact.
I tell them, don't worry about it because it has nothing to do with public health. This was all a scam, a giant scam. This was a ripoff of the country by Obama and Biden. And let's say Obama started it and got it rolling. And a terrible ripoff. They'll have more money to spend for health care. If you look at it, now they can go out and spend it on something that's meaningful. And nobody's doing more for health care than the Republican Party.
Now, analysts believe that Trump's move to end that Obama-era rule will save consumers and producers. Jason Isaac, CEO of American Energy Institute, he spoke with the Center Square before Trump's actions Thursday.
It's about $2,200 just in the corporate average fuel economy credits that are tacked on to vehicles sold in 2023. And then you have other greenhouse gas reporting requirements and trading credits that add on. So this is going to be great for the consumers. It's going to lower the cost of trucks. It's going to lower the cost of vehicles because you're just no longer going to have these overburdensome regulations that really don't do anything to impact the environment or the climate whatsoever.
And we'll continue to watch the impacts of that policy from the Trump administration on you, the taxpayer. And from cheaper vehicles down the road to ensuring those roads you share with big rigs are safe, let's now connect with the Center Square managing editor, Alan Wooten. Alan, thanks for taking time with the Center Square Daily. Let's talk about your story. Transportation officials say a loophole's been closed on CDL drivers. What's going on here?
Well, we're talking about non-domiciled CDL licensures, and the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they've done some audits. They did some throughout last year. They've done some this year. They have now gotten it to where there is a new rule. It was published in the Federal Register this morning, so it'll take effect in 30 days. That would be March 14 is day 30 from now. And what it does is it makes it where if you're going to go and apply for a licensure that's a non-domiciled CDL, you're going to have to show, your visas, your H-2A, H-2B, E-2, or your Form I-94. You're also going to be checked through the SAVE system. So this is, those things were part of the process before, but it was a lot more expansive than that. So this has tightened it up. So we're going to know who is getting the CDL licenses.
Of course, CDL, commercial driver's license. What does non-domicile mean for people who aren't plugged into this language? What exactly does that mean?
Well, that would mean typically that in most basic terms, you're probably not a U.S. citizen. You may be here legally. I mean, there are many, many truckers who have non-domiciled CDL licenses, and they're fine. They are abiding by the rules. But to give you some impact on what those visas are, H-2A, that would be the seasonal agricultural time. H-2B, that's non-agricultural work. So that might be the folks that you see working in your community that are like landscaping or construction. The E-2 visa is long-term, and that's from countries that we have treaties with. So that would be a business that might have some substantial investment. So you might be talking about scientists or something like that, people at universities. And then the Form I-94 that I spoke about, if you come through a port of call, you have to show your passport, and U.S. Customs and Border Patrol would typically give you a document that says, this is when you arrived, and this is how long you may stay. You'll have dates on it. So that's what that is about. The SAFE system, that's an acronym for Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements Program. Now, that's a mouthful, and that's why they call it SAVE. But that connects to databases for Social Security, driver's license, housing assistance, things like that.
Now, clearly, this is something that was spurred on because of some notable fatal crashes that have happened across the country. Just in the past year, Wyoming had 3 dead and 20 injured. Florida, 3 dead. In California, 2 different instances, as you reported, Alan, with 4 dead. Clearly, that's raised the alarm for regulators and people looking to keep the roadways safe, while you've got families traveling in sedans or vans. They're going right up next to huge big rigs. It's a big issue.
Have you ever been on a freeway and been right beside one? I mean, it's you want to make sure that guy or gal knows what they're doing behind the wheel. But 2 of the biggest incidences were triple fatals. One was down in Florida on August 12th. It was a fellow who he was on the Florida Turnpike. It's a 70 miles per hour zone. And while he was on there, he came to one of those areas. You've seen them. There's a guardrail. There's a brake. It says emergency vehicles only. He went to turn and do a U-turn out there on the Florida Turnpike. What happened? The video was gruesome. A minivan was behind it. All 3 passengers were killed. It just slid right under the trailer. In Florida, you had another person who probably, I don't know for sure, but probably there were message signs that were saying there was an accident ahead. This guy just barreled in and had about an 8-car pileup. I mean, it was very gruesome. We saw video of that as well. Those 2 really grabbed the nation's attention last year, and the one in California was in October. So you're talking about it basically in the last 6 or 7 months. But the audits that the Motor Carrier Association was already doing had begun before that, and they have had some significant repercussions.
This is one of those things where it's a federal policy, but it's managed by states, right?
Yes.
Getting a CDL license, you got to follow certain federal guidelines and requirements, but it's the states that are providing these licenses. In your reporting, you highlighted they've found some non-compliant states in all of this: New York, California, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Colorado, North Carolina. Alan, I got to tell you, data I was provided by Illinois State Police shows nearly 1 in 5 CDL holders with English language proficiency infractions, they have licenses issued by the state of Illinois. So what can be done? Is this a rule to help kind of plug that hole and to ensure that these states are actually complying and giving people who should have the licenses and keeping those who shouldn't from obtaining those?
Well, it's multifaceted. One of the audits that came out late last year was on non-compliant training programs. Now, there were more than 3,000 nationwide who were taken down immediately. There were 78 in North Carolina, for example. And much to my surprise, I learned that there was an Eastern North Carolina Baptist church. There was the Head Start program, which is based out of Raleigh. There was a community college, which they're very frequently training drivers. But those were on the list that were involuntarily shut down. Then a second part of this is the audit that came out just recently that you're referring to. North Carolina was 54% of non-domiciled CDLs were issued to people who were not legal to have them. 1 in 2. That's put $50 million of federal money at risk for North Carolina. But you've got the training program aspect of it is one thing, and then you've also got, after these applicants go and try to get their CDLs, they're somehow kind of getting green lighted through there. And the other thing that the Trump administration has done is they've put the English proficiency back into it, and that, I think that's really one of the biggest things. I think if the guy in Florida could have read a sign, he probably would not have tried that U-turn.
Yeah, one thing I was told in my investigation in Illinois was that Illinois State Police, since that English language proficiency rule was put back in, they're prohibited from asking immigration status in the land of Lincoln because Illinois is a migrant sanctuary state. But in talking with some sources, even those who conduct these English language proficiency exams, they say it's a pretty concise and go-to list of 5, 6, 7, 8 questions, and they start asking those questions, and if the driver even for a moment doesn't seem to understand the basic English questions, they shut the whole thing down. And obviously, we've gotten data showing that's a problem in Illinois and some other states. But these are good-paying jobs, Alan. These are jobs that pay very well. Young people looking for a trade might consider getting a CDL license. But is there something that the private sector needs to do here to shore things up and make sure that people who get licenses are supposed to?
Well, that's a really good question, Greg. And one of the things that's happened is, I'm sure you've heard it where you're at in the middle of the country, driver shortage. We need big rig drivers, and that is something we have heard. But in talking to some of the trucking industry agents, that's somewhat true. But also, the industry was trying to drive profits, and so the folks who what was it, last 4 years, we've had somewhere between 11 and 20 million, depending on which report you want to go with, as far as people come to the country illegally. They are willing to work, and it could be what is air quotes cheap labor. And so that is actually robbing American truckers right here on their own home soil. And that's part of that Trump administration policy of make America great again. Well, they want to do it for all the workers here as well. But the trucking industry has suffered in that. Even the regulation, the deregulation that came out yesterday is going to be a boon to the trucking industry, because can you imagine what it costs to build an electric truck? I mean, it's enormous.
That is pretty interesting stuff there. Alan, thank you so much for taking time. Looking forward to our next conversation here for the Center Square Daily. Now time for America's Talking, with clips from state houses across the country, where we start in Arizona. Jane Aaron with Herrera Arellano on behalf of Giffords, the gun control lobby, speaking in opposition to Arizona House Bill 2076 earlier this week.
The bill would enhance and provide taxpayer funding for a fundamentally flawed and dangerous policy of allowing teachers and staff to be armed on campus. In addition to establishing programmatic funding, the bill adds confidentiality provisions that would prohibit the disclosure of the identity of any teachers on campus who are in fact carrying weapons, whether that disclosure be to law enforcement or to the parents of other children that want to know if there's a gun in their classroom. The bill gives teachers and school employees who are certified pursuant to this program complete criminal and civil immunity for any harm caused with a firearm during an active crisis, so long as they act in good faith. This means that as long as someone acts in good faith, they could be exempt from any penalty, and the child's family would also be prevented from pursuing recourse civilly.
Interesting to hear Giffords lay out some of the provisions of that Arizona bill allowing for teachers to be armed in schools. But that list of things that they oppose, I would imagine if you asked a Second Amendment advocate, they would say those are precisely the things that they would support. So from Arizona to Pennsylvania, several talking about the issue of subsidies for social services. And Pennsylvania State Representative Jim Haddock talking with Maternal and Family Health Services President and CEO Maria Montero Edwards. They were discussing the subsidies for women, infant, and children.
And last year, the chaos in Washington, they did go after WIC.
They did.
And it was one of the few times our Congress stood up to the president.
That's right.
Any rumblings currently on funding? I know it's been flat funded.
Well,
Farm
so
bill's pending.
we have funding through September 30th through the federal fiscal year. But what we need to do with WIC, and I know this is at the national level, we need to get WIC included with the national breakfast program, the school lunch breakfast program, so that it is always in there. WIC right now has to be renewed every year, and that's a problem.
Continuing our focus on how state houses are handling federal taxpayer subsidies in Michigan, State Budget Director Jen Flood talked about the $10 billion cost for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program that Michigan taxpayers would have had to have paid because of their error rate. But she said that they've worked to draw that error rate down to just only owing $4 billion.
But $4 billion is still significant for the state budget. We also invested early to drive down Michigan's SNAP error rate. As we're watching other states roll out their budgets across the state, right now executives are proposing dollars to drill down on this effort to drive down our error rate. And so we're many months ahead. Michigan's made great progress on this over the past few years, coming from a 13% error rate down to 9%. And with the resources from last year's budget, the department continues to focus on driving that down. Even with these steps, $4 billion in costs remain.
So with those costs remaining and the taxpayers in Michigan looking at $4 billion, could they get the error rates down even further from 9% to under 6%? Something that's still yet to be seen, not just in Michigan, but in states across the country. And down in Georgia, they're also talking about the SNAP error rate. Georgia State Representative Martin Montahan, he talked about when error rates happen, eligibility goes unchecked, or the system fails to keep up with some real-world changes. And he said in the state of Georgia, they've got a bill that does three, quote, very big things.
First, it modernizes eligibility and verification. It requires timely verification, shorter certification periods for high-risk cases, and continuous data matching so that eligibility reflects real life, not outdated paperwork. Second, it strengthens program integrity and accountability, ensures that major policy decisions, like waiving federal work requirements, are made by elected representatives of the people, not through administrative actions alone. It also improves fraud deterrence, enhances EBT card security, and provides clear guidance to retailers consistent with federal law.
Now, he also went on to say the bill is not about taking benefits away from eligible families who utilize SNAP. He says it's about protecting the program so it remains sustainable, credible, and focuses on the people it was designed to serve with federal tax dollars. Well, that's it for the Center Square Daily from my studios in Central Illinois. I'm Greg Bishop, and join us back here Tuesday for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from across the country, only with the Center Square Daily.